Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for watching live. We're on rebroadcast here at the smartmoneyculture.tv, and we're going to just dive into the news today. And the way I've got this broken up is there's a lot of both candidates did town halls where they talked about their policies, and there's some new information coming out, but it's really not coming out in the interviews or appearances that they're doing, the press appearances, and it's coming out more by what the administration is doing or the plans that Trump is announcing outside of some of these interviews. So um, some of this is old news, some of this is newer news, but again, I think it's drawn a line between the two parties to see what are they really going to do as far as taxation, inflation, and how are they going to help the economy, and how that's going to affect your bottom line. And then we'll get into the tax issues of the day, doing that deep dive into those case studies. So first article here is from a different site, and this has to do with the ongoing war in Israel. And interesting enough, if you haven't heard this news, this did come out. This actually came out. This article came out yesterday, but this has been announced. And talking about the threatened arms embargo to Israel. So normally you don't issue an embargo on your ally. But there's a lot of concern, contention. The Harris campaign denied that they supported an arms embargo on Israel to force them to provide more food, more supplies to Gaza, and also to start addressing the issues being created in Lebanon so you have Hezbollah attacking from Lebanon. Gaza, they're still attacking them with rockets from Gaza. And so to get to the core of the issue here, and they say Biden-Harris administration. To be fair, I'm not sure how much Harris is in charge right now, because if she was, because it's so confusing. Nobody knows who's actually running the White House right now. Joe Biden has struggled mightily, as we've seen, and I'm not sure if Harris is running the White House at the same time she's running a campaign, or if it's just Biden staffers. So I'm not sure how, to be fair to Harris, I'm not sure how much she's to be blamed for this, but she has supported and argued for an arms embargo before, but then said she wouldn't do it, and then now the Biden administration is doing it. So they want to remove restrictions on the use of container and closed trucks. So these are all passing through Israel, and Israel's controlling the crossing from Egypt into Gaza, because that's where a lot of the arms and weapons were being funneled prior to them taking control of those crossings. And the concern is the people aren't getting enough supplies, so the people of Gaza are suffering during this war. So they want to waive customs requirements from enemy territory until such a time as the UN is able to implement its own process. They also want them to allow the Jordanian armed forces to enter the Gaza Strip and assert military control over the Gaza Strip, and that would stop essentially Israel going in and targeting and taking out Hamas. So at this point, the current situation, I don't. It's hard to tell what's going on. It's drug on. Hamas is still embedded among the population in Gaza. A lot of the population still supports it. So how do you stop Hamas once and for all? It's a very tricky and thorny situation. Is this the right move, though? So that's what the Biden administration is asking for, and if they don't comply, then they're threatening them with an arms embargo. Now, to look at this from Israel's point of view, which again, this article, this come out from Israel's point of view, They're saying this is a diplomatic gun to Israel's head. If you let in aid trucks without knowing exactly who and what is on them, aid trucks organized by an agency that notoriously employs Hamas terrorists, then you're just giving aid to the enemy. So this is unprecedented in military history where a country is required to send food and supplies to someone that's actively trying to destroy them and started this war. I'm not saying that they shouldn't provide aid, but the aid should be controlled, because the problem is that most of the aid is taken over by Hamas. They sell the aid at a huge markup. Well, this aid is given to them by Israel. Hamas seizes it and then sells it at a premium price to the people of Gaza, and that's how they're continuing to fund their terror. So it's just, yeah, it's I mean, Israel has stepped up the requirements, requiring that aid workers actually sign for it, so they know who's supposed to be um, in charge of the aid convoys, and so that if they just give it over to Hamas, they can be held liable, and that's another major tripping point. Let's see what happens. I mean, we're in October, just a couple weeks before November. I think an aid arms embargo on Israel is just going to drive them to other countries to purchase arms. But again, depending on where you stand, it's a nasty situation anywhere you go about it. So next article here. This is another interesting article. I mean, we talked yesterday about, or a couple days ago, about how Elon Musk and SpaceX launched a rocket, and they're reusing the booster, which is a 20-foot tall booster, came back, landed in on its own power, and a tower designed to capture it. If you haven't watched the video, it's pretty amazing. It's a huge step forward to having reusable rockets that can go back and that we can launch time and time again into space. So now California agency Coastal Commission the California Coastal Commission, for some reason, is in charge of regulating rocket launches 1,000 miles from the coastline. And so again, this is they're asserting regulatory powers over the company's launches that's in the middle of the valley. Vandenberg Space Force Base in Santa Barbara. So they've already launched quite a few rockets from this. The concern is that in their actual language, so they deny the permits to expand their launches based on Elon Musk political views, and that's called censorship. The government cannot take actions based on someone's point of view. If someone doesn't like the current president, I mean, it'd be like if Texas went and attacked Google because they supported President Biden or Vice President Harris. It's clearly against the Constitution, and so I think they're going to be successful with this lawsuit. They launched 28 rockets last year as they're doing this, and this is all done under contract from NASA. So they're making huge strides, a lot of progress, and it doesn't always have to be political, and it shouldn't always be political. So we'll see what's going to happen from here. I think this is going to be pretty quick smackdown from the courts because it is a pretty egregious violation. You can't say that you're not giving them the money for political reasons. Now, really diving into some of what's come out of the Harris campaign, she just had a interview on Fox News yesterday. I'm not going to comment about it too much. There's people on the left are saying she knocked it out of the park. People on the right are saying that it was a disaster. If you have questions about it, watch the video, make your determination. But we didn't get any policy out of it. There's no real policy statements. She didn't confirm or deny much, so that's why I don't plan to spend much time on it, if any. Moving forward, one thing that she has suggested, and this is something that that came out of her campaign. Um, Again, this article is from yesterday. Is a new plan to give forgivable loans to Black men. So we have something called the Equal Protection Clause. So you can't favor someone or discriminate against someone based on race, religion, um, sex. So it's pretty clear here that the government cannot benefit just one group of people based on one of those criteria. So if you have people that are disadvantaged due to being hit by the hurricanes Milton and Helene, yes, you're favoring one geographic area, but they need the help. They just got clobbered. Same thing with the disaster. So yes, that kind of, we're going to favor one area because they really need the help. That's fine. If there's a reason behind, we're going to help a certain area, but parsing that out by race, religion, sex is unconstitutional, and it's been very clear. The courts have been very consistent about this. So this is why she came out with this proposal to give fully forgivable loans to Black entrepreneurs. Fully forgivable loans? See, that's what it doesn't make much sense to me. But she said she would give 1 million loans, forgive up to $20,000 to Black entrepreneurs and others that have historically faced barriers. Which means what? Again, this is legal scholars just saying, look, this is going to be struck down. This isn't going to go anywhere. Why is she doing this 2 weeks before election? Some people are positing or guessing that she's desperate at this point. But again, this is something that, if given the opportunity to be put in place, would probably be struck down and quickly. It's just, if you want to do it, generally you can. So again, here's the actual: race, religion, national origin, sex, age, or marital status. So the Equal Credit Opportunity Act and the Equal Protection Clause prohibits any kind of discrimination based on race. And so this isn't going to go far. The ironic part about this, and this goes a little bit more into the history of why. In the next article, some of the things that she pitched to was for reparations, but also for Black men to get involved with marijuana business. So again, this is a little stereotypical, and could be you can see it as demeaning. So, but we're out of time, so we're going to be right back after the break. Welcome back, everybody. And just to wrap up what we were just talking about, we're going to share, and this is directly from the article that we were talking about. Get that article back up. So they actually cite this. This is the Twitter policy, the policy that was announced on Twitter, and we're going to go ahead and share this. So this is directly from the Harris campaign, from at Kamala Harris. So just talking about what this policy is: provide up to 1 million loans that are fully forgivable, up to 20,000 for Black entrepreneurs. She just took out the Black and made it to disadvantaged people. She might have a stand, but again, specifically putting in Black entrepreneurs makes it constitutionally unconstitutional. Support education, training, mentorship for programs that lead to good paying jobs for Black men, including pathways to become teachers. Protecting cryptocurrency investments, so Black men who make them know their money is safe. When people invest in cryptocurrency, it's a risk. It could be argued as one of the more volatile risks out there. So why would you protect it for black men and nobody else? I don't think it should be protected. I don't see why the government should be involved in that. Again, if people want to make more, if they're concerned about the investments, they should be um, more conservative with their investments. There's a lot to do that. You can talk to any advisor and they'll help you do that. But launch a national health initiative focused on the illnesses that disproportionately impact black men. And then lastly, legalize recreational marijuana and create opportunities for black Americans to succeed in this new industry. So this is directly from the Harris campaign. It's not just one mention of helping black men, it's throughout. So, yeah, it's pretty unconstitutional. Um, and the ironic thing about this is, that the article notes, um, Kamala Harris, for all the talk about legalizing marijuana, when she was a prosecutor, she caught a lot of flack for putting thousands of people in jail for smoking weed or marijuana. Um, some people change their policies with new information, but it's a little ironic that she put a lot of black men in particular and a lot of leftist groups are very and have been very upset with Harris for exactly that. So, want to move on to the next article, but before we do, um, we just had some breaking news that I want to jump to, and this is from townhall.com. I'm sure this is going to be all. This is from the Associated Press. Israel launched some more strikes yesterday or Thursday morning. So I believe it's Thursday morning, and they recovered Yahweh Sinwar's body. And this is the mastermind of the October 7th attacks. So the horrific attacks that occurred. So, coming out from Israel's defense minister, and again, announcing that the U.S. officials were just notified that they're in possession of his body, and he was targeted in an airstrike Thursday near the city of Rafah, so in southern Gaza. So here's the problem. We were just talking about targeting terrorists, targeting their leaders, the people that actually planned for this mass slaughter, hostage taking, rape. I mean, just absolutely brutal actions on October 7th. If you haven't read up, we should understand what we're facing in it and the evil that comes out. So again, I celebrate that he's dead. People that plan mass murder like that and just absolutely horrific actions, you can't negotiate with people like that. You just can't. And so he took over in Hamas in 2017 after the previous person was killed in Tehran. But again, it's before that in 2011, he was treated for a brain tumor in Israel, and then he was in jail for 22 years, but was released as part of a prisoner exchange. And what did he do? He went right back to planning terrorist attacks. So kudos to Israel, even though they're facing an arms embargo now for taking out the leader and planner for continuing the war. If they let up, Hamas has vowed to just go right back to October 7th. And I don't see how any country can tolerate people coming in by the thousands, slaughtering civilians in mass, and committing the horrible, horrible actions that they've taken. There's not a country in the world that would tolerate that. Anyway, back to the news. I mean, this just broke. It's just kind of just heavy stuff. So again, this just came out this morning. Today's October 17th, 5 a.m. A new round of student loan forgiveness ahead of the election. So again, President Biden announced this, and this is specifically targeting or meant to benefit public employee unions members. So again, they're saying over 1 million public service workers have gotten the relief they're entitled to under this law. However, all these different announcements he describes as fixes have been, this latest ones to help teachers, nurses, and firefighters. However, they've been smacked down multiple times by the court. It's been consistent. I haven't heard of a single court case where they haven't gotten, these haven't been struck down. So, he clawed back, most of this clawed back by the courts, ruling that he can't make such moves without Congress because this is powers of the purse. Without congressional actions, this is why, and again, I think it's true of both parties, where a new president gets elected and all of a sudden they make all kinds of actions and decisions, not based on law, based on what the executive wants to do. Congress needs to be forced to act. The power of the executive should be limited. And that's why we get all these actions, and that the board has been thrown wide open. It's not based on any acts by Congress, but the executive just moving forward with what they want to do, regardless of what the law has been put in place. So the reasons they're executive, they're supposed to carry out what Congress has passed, is not just do their own thing. And I know it's very, such thought is very dated today. So again, many of the student loan forgiveness plans have already been blocked in the courts. And again, it's the people that don't have, over 60% of Americans don't have a college degree, and those are the average taxpayers are going to be the ones paying for these student loan forgiveness plans. One last article from the Biden administration, and LNG. So this is banning natural gas, and it's banning exports. So why would we ban exports to other markets? So again, this is part of the Biden administration's war on fossil fuels. They want to do a year-long environmental review of how liquid natural gas can affect the environment. If we are producing and exporting natural gas, how would that affect the world economy, the global environment? And so that's really what's put on hold. Any exports of natural gas, it's really hurt over. Currently, there's around 200,000 jobs being affected. Over 10 years, they said they're arguing that it would be between 500,000 to 901,000 jobs that would be affected, about 103.9 billion in lost wages, labor income, if that ban stays in place. So they put this ban in place, and it's just sat there, and they have not made much effort to get this taken care of since February. And again, cost the U.S. economy between 122 and 215 billion. So again, it's really hurts fossil fuels. Natural gas is one of the cleanest fuels out there. And the question is, why are they doing this? Mainly to cut back and reduce fossil fuel production by the United States. So in many ways, not approving leases, etc., there's been a stranglehold on the production of natural gas, oil exploration, etc., throughout the United States. And so even though we led the world by stopping it to non-free trade countries, just making it so people have to turn to other countries that are not our friends, like Russia, and which helps fund their war in Ukraine. If you want to hurt Russia, produce fossil fuels, and it will tank their economy as the price of oil goes down. Same with Venezuela, other places. When oil costs are high, it helps all the worst actors in the world. So switching gears here, but it kind of segues right into this. Trump did a couple town halls yesterday. This one was specifically with women voters in Georgia, and he probably had a very favorable audience. But one of the first questions is, how is he going to deal with inflation? How do you deal with high prices? Because even today we have very high inflation, and even if it's not climbing as fast as it did, the prices are still high. When you look at prices across the board, especially for housing, for goods, for vehicles, it's still much higher than it used to. And so the number one question with him is, and I think there's a misstatement here, but he said the solution starts with interest rates, but the real source of this is energy. Energy goes into everything that we do. So you can't describe a single activity where they're not using fossil fuels or electric power to some extent. So he promised a 50% reduction in energy bills 1 year from him being elected. I am going to write that down because most politicians refuse to state specific numbers and goals like this, and Trump does for this stuff around. But I think we should hold him accountable for this. If he does get elected, okay, I'm going to be paying attention here. Is this really going to happen? Again, this is an hour-long forum, and he was pressed on how to get reductions in across to go trickle down through the economy, because everything's higher. Even though they save in one area, it's like they just breathe a little bit, and the costs aren't directly passed down to consumers right away. And the host, Harris Faulkner, he says, we're still going uphill constantly with these price increases. Even though the rate of inflation has decreased, it's still going up. And he blames it on energy costs more than anything else. And we just talked about the Biden administration pausing and stopping exports of energy. And you would ask, how does that help prices here in the United States? When global prices go down, I mean, energy is fungible. When global prices go down, it causes the prices in the United States to go down. When you have goods like that can be just shipped overseas, etc., when the cost is lower overall, again, like the price of oil per barrel is a global price, and there's variations in there, but overall, it's when it goes up, it affects the whole world. And so he's also saying that there's a lot of wasteful spending on the Green New Deal, and a huge change in energy prices. So again, Trump is arguing that during his presidency, we had energy dominance and independence, and that's changed drastically. So I think let's see how it goes. That's the biggest takeaway from that. I mean, there's one other small thing that I'm going to get to in just a sec, but I wanted to focus on energy. This is actually a pretty interesting thing. So Google quietly signed a deal to use nuclear power for its AI operations. So artificial intelligence requires a lot of power and energy. And how are they going to supply this power and energy? Nuclear power. Why nuclear power? Well, modern nuclear plants are very efficient, very safe. Again, they've learned a lot over the last 50 years. And so they're having smaller power plants. So again, it's energy from a small nuclear reactor to power its nuclear energy. And this is going to be an ongoing thing. And why nuclear? Because it's reliable. And these are something that can be built out and improved to support these technologies. So it's a small modular reactor that they're coming on, and they can bring these on fairly quickly. And it's carbon-free energy, and especially if you have AI, you need consistent power source, which again, you don't have that with solar or wind. They might supplement it with solar and wind, but it will be primarily provided by nuclear power. So again, if we want to use less fossil fuels, nuclear energy really is the way to go. But again, it's got politically, it's still a hot potato. Um, but I think Europe has used nuclear power successfully for decades, and I think we can learn from that. So one other thing, at the same town hall, someone asked Trump a question about men and women's sports. Now, whether you like it and again, this is probably a very Republican group. Um, Donald Trump said, look, they'll get rid of it from day one. The Biden administration made a change to Title IX to include gender. All they would have to do is reverse it. Again, that's a problem with having executive action instead of Congress actually acting. The next president can just flip the switch. But if he does that, what's going to stop the next president from coming in and just flipping it back and throwing everything into chaos again? So again, kind of highlight the issues there with presidents just doing what they want. And it goes both ways. So a lot of news, a lot of things that happening out there as we get closer to the election. I'm sure we're going to have some more surprises, and just trying to help everybody be informed. So want to pivot here to really dive into some of these case studies. And I get questions all the time. How long does it take? What does it look like? What can I expect as I get ready to go into these? So as I'm trying to deal with the IRS. And so it's a fairly consistent process throughout. But that's why I want to do some of these case studies to just say, hey, this is what actually happened in a case. This is what we're looking up. And I have 2 cases lined up to go through. Hopefully we'll be able to get through both of them. But just to give you an idea of what's going on and what does a case look like. And I'm going to avoid any personal details, but just kind of go through and give you a bird's eye view of what it's like to actually have a case with the IRS and get professional help, how it should look like. So we've got another break coming up, and we will be right back and go through those case studies. And again, if you have any questions, you can always give us a call, 520-485-7371. Welcome back, everybody. And we're going to dive into some of this information here. I'm going to talk about, first of all, a short one. It should be pretty easy to go through. This is a case where someone hired us and they actually owed less than $10,000. And we typically don't take these cases on because it doesn't really warrant our fees. So we decided they really wanted the help. We charged them a very minimal fee, less than $1,000, and decided to help them out. So they hired on in September of 2020. We gave them idea, what we're looking at, sent them the power of attorney to get this taken care of. And once they got signed on, we reached out to the IRS. Now, the issue is that they had some balances here, but they had an automatic underreporter. And that was the problem, is that this underreporting just wasn't being finished by the IRS. They didn't know how to contest it or deal with it. So they wanted us to handle the underreporting as well as deal with any damage coming out of this. So we reviewed the case with her to see if she could contest it, and went through all the information with her as far as what the IRS was asking for her. She couldn't contest it, so we just walked her through this process, got her so we got the audit finished and wrapped up, did a first-time penalty abatement, and again, this is moving very quickly because she hired in September. We got the power of attorney in October. Christmas holidays, everybody takes a break. But by February, the audit was done, and we had agreed with the audit. And then we, on the collection side, we did the first time penalty abatement, got the total amount of balances, and by May had wrapped up her case with an installment agreement. So roughly 7 months on the case. Most of the time was spent waiting for the audit to be finalized, to be processed. And once that was processed and the balances were assessed, we were able to take care of that for her and set her up on a payment plan that was easy for her to afford. So that's typically how you would want a case to go, a fairly easy case. Total balance was just over $8,000 in this case. So set up on a payment plan of $225 a month, and to take care of the balance, and she can breathe easy. Again, we reduced some penalties and interest off the case for her as well. Most simple cases like this, we actually tell the clients, hey, if you want to, you can call and try to resolve this and not pay any attorney fees. Again, it's, for us, we have attorneys working the case. We're on the case for 6 to 7 months. It doesn't warrant, it costs us more money to have an attorney working the case for 6 to 7 months than it does, than we actually receive on fees for cases like this. But we will always give out free advice. We did that with her. She still wanted us to take on the case, so we could charge a nominal fee, just to get something, to pay my attorneys, and get the case taken care of. So that was pretty simple, straightforward case. We're going to move to a case that wasn't so simple and straightforward. Most of them aren't. Most of them have something going on. And this case, the next case, was actually referred to us by a bankruptcy attorney. So they'd gone to the bankruptcy attorney to discuss bankruptcy. Bankruptcy was not the right fit for them. That's what the bankruptcy attorney in here had determined. They had too many assets. And this is a case where she had a serious accident. So she was in an accident on a horse, tore a rotator cuff, broke some ribs, and had a brain bleed. So now she has to wear a helmet really for the rest of her life, and had some damage, brain damage. And again, this is a pretty scary case. We want to do right by her and get her taken care of. She hadn't, while going through all of this, she hadn't filed her returns, even though she did have some income. But again, this is someone who had suffered a severe brain injury and needed a lot of assistance. So this is going to be an interesting case. I remember this case. So we're representing her for the IRS, and Arizona. Total balance here was around $50,000. I can give you a better idea. Closer to 60,000 once everything was assessed, but she didn't know exactly how much she was going to owe. And so again, she hired in 2020, but this is the case that drug on until 2023, and I'll explain why. Main reason is the debt hadn't been assessed. So we got in there, we got the tax returns, we prepared, we had a CPA prepare them, and then submit the returns to the IRS. It took them approximately 6 months to process that. Coming out of COVID, it was actually taking up to a year. So we were putting together her financial information. As we did this, some of the returns started processing sooner than others. So we had tax debt going into collections before all the other tax returns were prepared. So we had to buy as much time as possible while we waited for all the returns to process. Because to wrap up a case, you have to have everything included in one basket. If you have balances falling into the case later, it will default what's set up. So you have to make sure all the returns are filed, fully processed before you can move forward. And again, her issue with her mental capacity made it a lot more difficult to get things from her and to move the case forward because she had memory issues. When you spoke to her, she was aware and she was clear of mind, but due to the memory issues, she had a hard time remembering what we needed and responding timely. So while we put together the financial information, the time keeps going, and we were getting again how to keep them current. So we were still, one of the things that we see a lot is when people are starting a case, you hire someone, they start on their back taxes. You have to stay compliant, which means moving forward, you have to file your tax returns timely. And we see this time and time again. We get someone and they were working with a tax preparer, someone that we referred them to, and we were waiting on the 2020 tax return went on extension, and we're just trying to hold off the collections while we wait for 2020 because that's now, we don't want to step away from the case knowing that there's another issue coming down the pipe. So part of this is being thorough. We're not stepping in a case just to set something up and say, hey, look, we did this, installment agreement's done, we're going to step away. No, we want to make sure that this is done completely. So once we got all the documents in, we're still waiting on the 2020. We advised them to put some property into a trust, etc. And we finally got the 2020 return by August, and here we are negotiating or following up to make sure everything's fully processed. We didn't get everything fully processed until September. We got a 60-day hold in September of 21. So again, this is just going and going. And they decided to just make a payment down on this. So they came into some money, made a payment down to the IRS. We're still waiting to do the abatement until everything has been processed. And followed up in November, still not processed. So they had two payments at this time, $24,000 sitting in the account, ready to address a good chunk of these balances. And so post-COVID, especially into 2021, they were taking forever to process returns. We continue to follow up with them. The case was assigned to special compliance in December of 2021, and they added another 6-month hold for the tax returns to process. So again, this is the case getting put out further and further back due to the entire mess of COVID. Now, currently, this still happens. I had someone that just I met with on Tuesday who had been trying to get his 2020 return processed since he filed in 21. And the IRS showed that they received it, then they didn't have it, then they claimed they never received it. He has the tracking information. He has the, from sending it certified to the IRS. He has proof he sent it. They keep losing it. And so we're going to help get this taken care of. So again, these delays still continue. By January of 2022, things had finally processed. We got the installment agreement form together, submitted that to the IRS. And again, she was still very concerned about the penalties and interest. And January, I followed up again. We had to resend the 433D, which is the installment agreement form. We had to follow up with them again. Again, this is what we do: is we stay on top of the IRS until it's done. And then Called again in February because they take about 45 days to process it. So that towards the end of February, they had it, they processed it, everything looked good. And at that point, once that was set up, we did the penalty abatement. And during this time period, so we wrapped it up. We wrapped up the case. Everything was done. And then they owed again for 2021. This was a smaller amount. But again, if you leave something hanging out there, it's going to default the whole thing. So in August of 2022, as a courtesy, we called and just added that to the installment agreement. If it's within a sufficient time, they'll just slide it in. But if it's too much or if it's too late, it can default it and you have to start over. So we set them up on the installment agreement that they were fine with, and then wrapped up the case in January of 23. Because when we started, anything we do with the IRS, we have to follow up and confirm with them. So in August, we found out that she owed. We renegotiated with the IRS and then verified that everything was completed, wrapped up, signed, and delivered in January of 23, and closed the case out for a second time, and just made sure that they knew that moving forward they could not owe. During this time period, we also looked into Arizona, and there was a small balance in the hundreds of dollars, less than $1,000 all together with Arizona, and I believe they just paid that off. So again, we'll make sure that you're straight with the IRS as well as state taxes. But as you can get an idea, a lot of time we're just waiting on the IRS, but we have to follow up with them consistently, make sure that the tax returns get processed, then that they process the installment agreement. Again, we had to call back multiple times on that each time. If you just call them and hound them every day, first you won't get through, but you'll just annoy the people that are actually doing it. They request 30 to 45 days, follow up with this then. And that's what really good about is following up with the IRS, making sure everything is taken care of. And then they had this outside issue that popped up. Instead of charging them again, we included that in the installment agreement as a courtesy. But moving forward, again, it's been a few years. They haven't had any problems. Everything's been good for them. And again, part of this, we also did the first-time penalty abatement to reduce those penalties once they were assessed. So they were very happy with our services. Again, this is where a case can stretch into years, but mainly because we were waiting on the tax returns post-COVID. If you don't feel like your case is moving forward, I've had times where people have called me, I'm not happy with my current company, it's taking too long. I'll review the case. And there's been times I've told them, look, I think they're doing everything they should. If this is what you're waiting on, I don't see that I would do anything different. And if that's the case, I'll leave it alone. The last thing I want to do is to take a case from somebody else and then still have the same delays with the IRS that they did and not be able to provide a better product or a better service. So again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us, 520-485-7371. You can find us on guardiantaxlaw.com. And again, all these shows are posted to our YouTube channel. The link to, you can find the link directly on our website at guardiantaxlaw.com. And sometimes cases do take a long time. But that's why we take care of our clients, give them that peace of mind to know that they'll be taken care of now and into the future. And again, we educate them so they know how to address their tax issues and how to breathe easy in the long run. So again, thank you for watching, and I hope this was, again, informative. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about some offer and compromises and how that one, because it's different than doing an installment agreement or a non-collectible status. Those are pretty similar. So have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.